If you're new to woodworking or DIY projects, the following video could literally change your life. Or at the very least, you'll find it mildly interesting. So stick around. This is a cabinet clamp, right? Wrong. This is a spreader or a jack. Well, I mean, it's still a clamp, but let me show you another use for it. On these cabinet clamps, it just has this pull pin. Pull that out and you can take that foot off, and then you can pull the entire piece right here off. Flip it to the other side. And it can be a little bit tricky getting it to pass through sometimes. And you've got a spreader or a jack, whatever you want to call it. And you may be asking yourself, when would ever I need this? When would ever I need this? Let me tell you whenever you would need this. Just the other day, I wanted to remove a permanent shelf from this bookcase. And after I had made all the cuts with the saw and everything, I flipped one of these clamps over and made it into a jack. And that way I was able to lift up and put pressure on the shelf to lift it without using the hammer all the time and banging everything up. But can you use other clamps, you're asking? Well, let's see. The fixed end of this clamp is real easy to remove. You just turn this screw that stays attached and it pulls right off. But you can see it leaves that nib. I'm gonna have to knock that out. For the other end, there's another nib, but that one's welded. Depending on what tools you have and what you're comfortable with, you could use an angle grinder on that. You could use a sander with some heavy grit sandpaper, or I've got a file here, so that's what I'm gonna use. Just slide the two pieces of the clamp back on in the opposite direction that they were normally facing. And now you've got your spreader or a jack or whatever you prefer to call it. If you ever need to use a jig, or maybe you just need to trace the outline of something that's kind of complicated and you want to attach two pieces of wood together temporarily, carpet tape, that's your best friend. Let me show you how this works. Let's say for whatever reason, I want to attach this piece of wood to this piece of wood temporarily. I'm just going to cut me off a piece of carpet tape here with the improper tool. Sometimes it can be a little bit of a pain to pull the other side off. Sometimes not. Now, if I needed to use this as a guide to route around, that's on there pretty good. But when I'm done, if I want to take it off, easy to do. I've used this method a lot, like for instance, whenever I did the epoxy and fire guitar, I taped down the jig on top of the guitar body. But if you want to take it to the next level, let's talk about CA glue. Super glue. This time I'm going to take my two boards and then I'm going to take some blue tape and I'm going to place that on this board and on this board. Then I'm going to take a super glue, and this comes in different viscosities. This is medium viscosity. I'm just going to run some of that right there on the blue tape. And then on this other side, I'm going to use some of this activator. I'll go into this a little bit in just a minute. And now that is good and stuck. And that is actually stuck better than even the carpet tape, because the carpet tape has a little bit of thickness to it, so it has a little bit of give. This doesn't really have any give. But when you're ready to take it back apart, there we go. Blue tape comes off and the blue tape comes off. This is the method I used when I routed out the tree on the 300-year-old wood and epoxy table I just did. Have you watched that video? Anyway, I used the blue tape and CA glue method. While I'm handing out this sage advice today, I would be remiss if I did not thank today's sponsor, Policy Genius. Policy Genius makes it easy to compare quotes from over a dozen top insurers all in one place. You could save 50% or more on life insurance by comparing quotes from Policy Genius. You could save $1,300 or more per year on life insurance by using Policy Genius to compare policies. The licensed experts at Policy Genius do not work for the insurance companies, they work for you, so you can trust them to help you navigate the buying process. That kind of service has earned Policy Genius thousands of 5-star reviews across Trustpilot and Google, and eligible applicants can get covered in as little as a week thanks to an award-winning policy option that swaps the standard medical exam requirement for a simple phone call. This exclusive policy was recently rated #1 by Forbes Advisor. That's higher than options from Ladder, Ethos, and Bestow. In just a couple minutes, you can work out how much life insurance you need and compare the personalized quotes to find your best price. When you're ready to apply, the Policy Genius team will handle the paperwork and scheduling for free. Tell them what they have to do is head to policygenius.com/Hacksman to get started right now. Policy Genius, when it comes to insurance, it's nice to get it right. This CA Glue Activator is a must-have. I went years without having this, and if you try to use CA Glue or Super Glue on 99% of things, you'll find that it really doesn't work that well. And it's because super glue works best if you put a very thin layer on and it can kind of absorb in and dry quickly. And if not, you'll find that most things you try to stick together, it just doesn't work. But with this activator, and this is, you can order this off of Amazon or whatever, with this activator, it sets it up instantly and you can glue all kinds of stuff together and fix all kinds of stuff. Let me show you. These LED lights in my mom and dad's ceiling keep breaking. The plastic keeps breaking on them. So I'm gonna see what I can do to fix this. The little wire pieces that hold this in place keep breaking off because I'm assuming the electrician used crummy lights when he put these up. These aren't, you know, we don't have any extra ones, so I can't really match it up exactly. So I want to be able to fix these. So I'm about to show you my super D-duper super glue hack, and that's baking soda. When you combine super glue, activator, and baking soda, you get the trifecta of superfication, stickification, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and put some super glue on here. Now on this particular thing, I'm not worried about how nice looking it is. I just need it to function. So I'm gonna put that kind of where it goes. And it's just kind of hanging there, okay? It's just kind of, because it's gonna take forever for that super glue to dry, if it does. Okay, now it's dry, but it may not be very strong even though it's dry. So I'm gonna take my rose gold plastic spoon here, and I'm gonna get some baking soda. And I'm gonna sprinkle that on there. And then I'm gonna put some super glue on there. There's a reaction that takes place between the baking soda and the super glue, and it basically turns the super glue into like plastic. You can use this to repair all kinds of plastic stuff. And you can see, and it's hard for you to see on camera, but wherever that baking soda went, it's just like a super hard layer of plastic, and it is just bonded back on there. And now it's good as new. And this is like the third one of these I've had to fix. Ta-da! Do you ever have problems when you're trying to drill a hole and you can't keep your drill straight and you're not sure what angle you're going in at? Here's a quick little easy tip to help you with that. Take another block, take the corner of that block and put it by right wherever you want to put your hole, and then line the drill bit up with that corner. You can draw a line on the end of another board. You can use that you can take 2 blocks Leave a little space there. Set your drill bit in that corner. And there you have 3 different ways to drill a hole super straight. So you've just glued up 2 pieces of wood together, and let's say it's heart pine, and you just found out that you've actually got a gap there, and that gap needs to be filled. Well, you can't buy heart pine wood filler to stain. So what's the solution? Put a little bit of glue in there, or a lot, and then take that sawdust and work it into there. You can also mix this on a separate board and basically make a putty. Once it's dry, sand it off, and you're good to go. Now this doesn't just work with heart pine. I'm just using that as an example. Any other wood, like maybe you're using mahogany or even pine, if you just don't have any wood filler, you can use this in a pinch. While we're talking about sanding, one tip for you is to get one of these, I don't know what they are, basically rubber eraser type material, but they're for cleaning sandpaper. These things are like $7 and they last forever, and they will save you far more than that in the cost of sandpaper. Traditionally, you'll see these used on like belt sanders usually, maybe an edge sander like in a cabinet shop, but at $7 a piece, approximately, you can't beat having one of these in your home shop. When you're marking measurements on lumber, don't mark it with just a line. 12 inches, you take your tape measure away, you walk back, okay, 12 inches. Well, is it at the top of the line, which is 12 inches? Is it at the bottom of the line, which is almost 12 1/16? Here's how to mark it. 13 inches. Mark it with a V, and that way, every time you walk away or come back or move your board, you'll always know the 13 inches is right there at the point of your V. And while we're talking about tape measures, if you're really new to DIY projects and you go to use your tape measure and you wonder, why does the end of the tape measure move? Well, that's because it moves to account for the thickness of the end of the tape right there. So when you push into a corner and measure, it goes up tight against it. When you measure on the outside of something, it slides out to account for the thickness of the end of the tape right there. So don't ever try to compensate for that yourself. Just let the tape do it. Hook on the end, just make sure that you pull. This one's kind of tight, so that's why I pull a little bit harder. And then when you go in a corner, make sure you push and take up that slack. So you need a 7-inch piece of this 2x6 cut on your miter saw. And you remember that you want to mark that 7 inches with a V. Good job. Now when you come back to it, you'll know exactly where that mark is, that's 7 inches. Take your speed square, and now you know that you want to cut on this line. So then you go and set this piece down. 10 minutes later, you pick it up, you bring it over to the chop saw, and you're cutting so many pieces you lose track. And, which side do you cut it on? Let me show you how to fix that so that you don't lose track. Whenever you mark it, go ahead and just do something on the side. That's what I do. And then I know that whenever I cut, I'll put the blade on this side, and this will be my drop piece, and this will be the piece I get. And then I don't get over there and get confused about which piece it was that I was keeping. If you've stained wood before, you know what a pain it can be to stain it, okay? Because you end up seeing all of the sanding marks if you're not careful. Well, here's the tip for that. All right, so this piece I've sanded. Oh, it's so smooth and beautiful. Let's put some stain on it and see what it looks like. That ain't right. See all those scratches? Trick to being able to see these sanding marks before you put the stain on is to be able to highlight the grain. And some people will do that by wetting a rag and putting water on the wood, and that will pop the grain to where you can see any sanding marks. But the problem is that it can also make the wood absorb the stain differently. So let me show you a better way. If you use mineral spirits, that will allow you to wet the wood and it will highlight the grain so that you can check for any sanding marks before you stain, but it won't pop the grain and it won't raise the grain and make the wood fuzzy. The mineral spirits is going to dry super quick, and in the meantime it lets you get a preview of what the stain is going to look like as far as any imperfections. Once it dries in just a few minutes, you can put the stain on and you're good to go, knowing that there's no surprises. On this side of the wood, I used mineral spirits to check for scratches, and on this side I used water, and you can see the difference. Because this grain was raised so much by the water, it really soaked in the stain more and made it darker, and it'll highlight imperfections even more than on this side, which will take it naturally. Guys, if you found this video helpful, please leave a like and a comment, and I will see you next time.